Hi, this is Kevin Trainer, and welcome to part one of my tutorial for the forms coding assignment that's part of the Easy University tutorial project. And in part one, we are going to implement the create pages for all of the model classes that are part of the Easy University database. And what we're going to do is that together we're going to do the first two, the instructor and the section. And then on your own, you're going to do the last four: course, semester, student, registration. Okay? And this is the first of three parts that we're doing here. In the first part, we're going to do the create pages, and then we're going to do, then we're going to move on to other functional pages, so that by the time we're done, we have a full CRUD application for Easy University. In each of the parts, we're going to follow a checklist, and I have it's in a little bit of rough form here. This is a Word document that I'm creating as I go through and create the tutorial. And I have a lot of terms here that have a blank in front of them. And the blank stands for the model class that we're dealing with at any particular time. Okay, so when we're doing part one, we're going to do this checklist 6 times. One for instructor, one for section, one for course, semester, student, registration. So the first time through, we're going to fill in the blanks in our mind with instructor. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create the model form subclass instructor form in forms.py. And then we're going to create the template, which is going to be called instructorform.html. And then we're going to create the URL pattern that is going to go to the instructor create page. It's going to forward us to the instructor create view. And then we're going to create the instructor create view. And then finally, we're going to go to instructor list, and we're going to add a link for create new instructor. And then finally, we're going to test it. Okay, so I'm going to follow this recipe or checklist for the first two model classes, instructor and section, and then I'm going to turn you loose on your own to do it for the last 4. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to create a model form subclass. Let's do that. So where does that go? Well, that goes in a Python module that we don't already have called forms.py. It's part of our app. So let's go create that. Let's go to course info, and we say we need a new Python file, and it's called forms. Okay. And we get that. Okay. So we're going to need an import. Let's do that first, because how are we going to get access to the magic if we don't bring in the modules that contain the Django magic? Okay, and I don't have all the imports yet, but it's going to be pretty clear pretty soon. Now I'm going to bring in the instructor form class from my already baked version. Okay. And here it is. Okay, looks like it needs an import. So let's make that type a little bigger so you can read. Okay, and so if we just highlight that and do an alt return, import course info models instructor. Yeah, that's it. So you see we got the import up there for it. Okay, now as with just about all the real magic of Django, the classes that we create when we're really able to harness the Django magic, they're subclasses of a superclass that came with the Django distribution. And this is, there's a superclass model form that is part of the package forms in Django. And so we're going to define instructor form as a subclass of model form. And we're going to add a couple of things. First of all, as with a lot of the magic that you get from these superclasses, you can signal to the superclasses how to configure themselves by placing entries into the inner class called meta. So we're defining an inner class meta, and we're saying that the model that we want is the instructor model class, and the fields that we want to include on the form are all the fields. Okay, so we're just giving it kind of basic information. Now we have the opportunity to define methods that are part of this cleaning process for forms that I think is really well described in the Pinkham book. Okay, so both the theory and the practicalities of the forms kind of workflow and division of responsibilities and all that kind of stuff. I think Pinkham does an excellent job on that. If you haven't read that yet, I invite you to do that. Okay, so what are we going to do? Well, as part of the cleaning that goes on for each of the fields, we can get a part of the action. So by defining a method, clean first name, we can get a chance to do some cleaning of the data. And all we're going to want to do is we're going to want to strip extra white space, extra spaces or tabs or whatever other kind of white space characters could have accidentally been keyed in front of the characters that they typed into the line or in back of it. Now, this is the thing that happens from kind of sloppy data entry, and it's really nice to just strip off these extra white space characters. So here's what we're saying. We're saying that we're going to get the data out of a data structure called cleaned data. Okay, so this has already been processed with the form. Okay, the form has come in, it's been processed, and here's our chance just to further clean up the data. So we say that we want to take the field first name from the cleaned data structure, and we want to strip off the white space. That's all we're saying. And we have one for last name where we want to do the same thing. Okay? It's that simple. Alrighty. Now, what's the next thing that we want to do? Well, the next thing we want to do is we want to create a template for instructor form.html. Okay, let's look. So I already have an instructor form.html, and I'm going to go get it and copy it in here. I'll be right back. Let me set that up. So I've gone out to the file system and found my already baked version of this project. And I'm just going to go into templates, course info, and paste instructor form.html. And let's just take a look at what's on it. Okay. Well, it is a template. It extends base.html. It's got two content type blocks. One called title, the other called content. Okay, and the name we want to show on the page for the title, well, this is the title that goes up in the tab, is going to be Create Instructor. And then what goes on the page? Well, it's a form. It's an HTML form. The action is a URL. Okay, and we'll visit in a minute how we get that URL. The method is a post. This is the preferred method to use. Method as in HTTP request method. We could say get or post. If we say get, then the parameter values from the form are going to appear tagged onto the URL. And that, I think, is just kind of messy. Okay, so it's accepted good practice to use the method post. So we're going to use post. CSRF token is part of the Django magic that is a defense against hacking. I'll leave you to read the details in the Pinkham book, but it's to make our page harder to hack. Okay, for the form itself, we're just going to have a template tag, and we just say form.asp. That's simple? Yeah, that's simple. Well, why so simple? Well, the reason it's so simple is we want this to be as painless as possible. So we'd like to use as much of the Django magic as we can. The other reason is that it makes this more extensible. If we code the form like this, okay, this gives us the opportunity to, every time we would add, say, another field to instructor, all we really need to do is apply the migrations to the database and test it again. And all of a sudden, the instructor will have another field, and the form, poof, it has another field that quickly. Okay, so what's the cost of this? Well, the cost of this is we're not getting a lot of control over the exact formatting of the page. And if we really care about this, we'd have to go and use some of the template tags that are shown in the Pinkham chapter about this to get more control over the layout and the content of the form. I think it's a good practice to do the following. Start with this high magic version, okay? And then if it turns out that you don't have the control over either the function or the appearance of the page that you want to, then go back and do more rendering of the form page by hand. Okay? We're going to have a button. It's a submit button, and it's going to say create instructor. That's it. That's all we have. So pretty easy stuff. All right, so what's the next thing that we're going to do? Um, we have our template page. Okay, we need to create a URL pattern for the page. Okay, let's go do that. All right, so the URL patterns that are relevant are all in this urls.py that's in the Course Info app. So let's go up there. Okay, and so far we have two URL patterns related to instructor. Okay, and we're going to add one. Now, I tend to keep these in a certain order. Okay, and we've got the list page, we've got the detail page. It's not accidental that we're going to be adding the create page next. Okay, and what I just want to do is put that next because this is the order in which I typically place them, and I learned this by watching what other people did. Okay, so I think this is a good order to have them in. Okay, and as we add the parts during this coding assignment, I think we're going to add these things in the typical orders. We're going to add them one after the next. Okay, so the URL is not surprising. It has instructor, and then we just have the term create. Okay, which says that we need to create a new one. We don't have to worry about primary keys because this page isn't going to take a primary key. It's going to cause one to be created, right? We have a class-based view called instructor create. It hasn't been coded yet, but we need an import for it. So it's usually easier for me to just go up here to the list, and I have, let's see, instructor detail. Well, I have all these in kind of sequential order, so I'm just going to put instructor create right at the end. This isn't my usual order. Instructor create. Okay, so that's the import. We don't have that view. We don't have that class-based view yet, but we have all this stuff. So here's the URL. Here's the name of the class-based view. And here's the name we're going to use for the URL pattern. Instructor create URL pattern. All right, we have that. So what's the next part? Well, I'm just going to go to my checklist. Create the class-based view for this page. Instructor create in views.py. Okay, let's do it. So let's go to views.py. Okay, and go up with the instructor views. Instructor list, instructor detail. Okay, so we're going to put an instructor create right at the end of the instructor views. And I'm just going to take my instructor create view from my already baked version. And I apologize. I'm having a hard time scrolling to the right piece of code. There it is. It wasn't cooperating. All right. So it's going to go right in here. And because this uses so much of the Django magic, it is very short. Okay, let's see what we have. Okay, instructor create is a subclass of view. It's got two fields. Okay, form class called instructor form, and template name, which points us to the template. And then it has something that is a pretty powerful Python approach. We're going to be using a mix-in. Okay, well, what's a mix-in? Well, in Python, it's possible for a particular class to be a subclass of more than one superclass. And we have this style of superclass that kind of adds extra functionality. And so we call this style mix-in. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to add the capability from this superclass, object create mix-in. And as you're going to see, it's going to hold all the common functionality that we need to do this kind of create work. All right, so let's go through the basics here. Let's do an import with an alt return. Okay, I've got that. Object create mix-in, it'd be nice to import it, but we don't have it yet. So where is that going to come from? Well, we typically put that kind of code into a module called utils.py. So let's bring our already coded version of that in. So it's part of course info, and the module is called utils, and I'm going to paste it. Then we're going to go look at it. Okay. And what does this have? Well, this superclass has some fields that the subclass is going to inherit. It has a form class field. It's not populated, it has none. It has a template name field that's not really populated. That's the empty string. Okay. And what's going to happen is that when we subclass this, we are going to override these two fields. Okay. So we're going to provide a value for form class. We're going to provide a value for template name. And the functionality that we inherit from the mix-in, the object create mix-in, it's going to implement the HTTP method get and the HTTP method post. Okay? So what's interesting is that this is common code that's going to work for all of the creates. It's going to work for instructor create, section create, semester create. It's going to work for all of them. Okay? It's been coded in a kind of general way to use these two fields. Okay? And then what's going to happen is that every time we subclass this, we're going to override, we're going to provide the values for form class and template name, which is going to make this code work. Okay, so what's the difference between the get and the post? Well, you may remember when I talked about this, so this was, I think, in the last of the coding assignments that we had. A get is typically generated when we click on a link. Okay, we click on a link in a web page. It generates an HTTP request that has the function code get. A post typically comes from a form. So we click on the submit button for a form and it does a post. Okay? By convention. Now, what works here is that when we click on a link that says we want to create a new whatever, in this case we're using it for instructor, well, what do we want to do? Well, we want to send back a form, right? Typically, if you want to create something, you want an empty form. So the get is going to is going to send back an empty form. Okay, what's the post going to do? Well, the post is actually getting a completed form in. So it's getting all the fields that were completed on the form, and it is going to apply them. Okay, well, let's look. So on the get, what do we want to do? We want to return a form. So we just say we want to render a form. We need to pass the request. We need to pass the template name that will be populated by the code in the implementing subclass. And we need to pass the form. Okay, that will be populated as well by the implementing subclass. So this is enough to generate a form. Okay, so we're going to get back a form page. Okay, empty. Then the user is going to fill it in, and they're going to click submit, and that's going to generate a post, and we're going to process the post right here. So what we get in is what we call a bound form. And again, the Pinkham book, I think, has a really good discussion of the whole form life cycle. Okay. And here's what we're going to do. We're going to validate it. How do we do it? We just say if bound form is valid, that's going to run the validation. Then we're going to create a new object, a new database object, which we get from saving the bound form. Okay, and we're going to return redirect new object. Where's this going to take us to? It's going to take us to the detail page. Okay, so this is going to redirect us to the detail page for that new object. In this case, it's going to be the instructor detail page. Okay, that's if everything goes well. Okay, if it's not valid, we're going to return the form, and at this point the form will have, because of the processing that goes on in this when we call is valid, okay, the form object is going to include the error messages. Okay, so when we render the form with the template, we're not only going to be sending back the values that we got sent in order to populate the page, we're also going to be sending back the errors and or warnings that came from the processing of that form. Okay, so what's cool here is we have both a get and a post. Okay. And again, the get is going to send back the empty form. The post is going to process the form and either forward to the detail page for the new instructor that we created, or it's going to send back an error form that's going to show what we entered in the form and the errors that are keeping it from being valid. Okay? And what's interesting is that we can get all of this capability in our view simply by saying that it is an instance of object create mixin. So let's go back to the view and let's put the import in. Oh, sorry. How do I want to do it? I just want to do alt return. So we put the import in for object create mixin. And now it knows what we need. So remember I said that the implementing subclass, which is instructor create, is going to provide the values for form class and template name. And here they are. So that's the only thing that it has to do. Okay? All of the real work is in this object create mixin. Okay? Cool. All right, that's done. Now, we're almost done. Let's go back to our checklist. Okay, we still don't have a link to this. Well, where do we want it? Well, we want it at the top of the list of instructors on instructor lists. So let's go do that. Let's go to instructor list. Okay, and here's where we want to put it. Under the let's get that type a little bigger for you. Under the H2 that says the title instructor list, and then before the unordered list that has all the instructors, we're just going to plunk in a little div here that's going to have the link. Okay, so let me get the code out of my already baked version. It's right here. And let me paste it in. And we'll walk through it. Okay. Okay. So what we have here is we have a link. We have the href. What is the href? Well, we want to use the URL from the course info instructor create URL pattern. And then, of course, we want the link to say create new instructor. And that should do it right there. So now we're down to everything but test. Let's go back to the checklist. We're down to number 6, test. Very good, let's do it. So let's go to our course. Let's go to the test. Okay, and when we click on instructors, we see that right before the list of instructors, we have a link for creating a new instructor. And again, this is maybe not great styling yet. Okay, this is really default style. So, you might say, Kevin, I'm not sure that layout is as attractive as we would like it to be, and I agree, the eventual version will look at least a little better than this. So if I want to create a new instructor, I click here, and I get the form, the first name and the last name. Okay, and let's add here. Let's add Mary Keller. Okay, so here's Mary Keller. Okay, now I just want to show you we can add extra spaces in front of Mary. We can add extra spaces beyond Mary. We can put extra spaces in front of Keller. We can put extra spaces after Keller. And our cleaning code is going to trim all those off. So we click on Create Instructor. As you can see, Mary Keller doesn't have all that extra white space around it. Okay? And then we've got just what we want. Oh, terrific. Now, are we done with testing? I don't think so, because should we be able to create a duplicate instructor with the same name? No, we should not. So let's go test that. Let's try to add Mary Keller again. Create new instructor. Okay, and let's say Mary Keller. Create instructor. Instructor with this last name, and first name already exists. So this is a lot of great functionality for not a lot of coding on our part. Okay, this is already built in to the forms capability that comes with Django, and especially when we are rendering the form in such an automatic way, form as P, it works pretty darn well. Okay, so that's great. Well, we don't have a cancel button. It might be nice to add that at some point. But if you're in the middle of some dialogue to do a create and you just abandon it, well, then you're fine. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. All right, so the next one, the sections, we're going to do that together too. And we're going to do that by cloning. Okay, because that's what you're going to do for courses, semesters, students, registrations. So I'm going to show you an example of how to take the code entries I've done so far and to clone your way to what you need. Okay, good. Okay, so let's remind ourselves what the checklist is. Sorry, let's close the browser for now. Okay, so where's our checklist? Create the model form subclass in forms.py. Okay, we're going to do section. So let's go to forms.py. Okay, and let's create section form. Let's do that. We want 2 blank lines and then section form. And of course, we're going to do some overtyping here. Section form. Okay. And what's the model class? Well, it's not instructor, it's section. That was easy enough. And what are the fields? We want all of the fields again. That makes a lot of sense. Okay. Now, do we have to do any cleaning? All right. Oh, first of all, before we go that far, we need an import for section. So highlight it, Alt return. There we go. That's done. Okay. Now, we only need to do cleaning, like stripping the extra white space off of the ends for fields that are entered as text. On section, the only field that we enter as text instead of select from a drop-down is section name. Okay? So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to get rid of one of these because we only have to clone one. And we're not going to clean first name. We're going to clean section name. Okay. And we're not going to access first name within cleaned data. We're going to access section name, and that's it. Okay, it's actually that fast, and then we don't need 2 blank lines at the end. We just need 1 line that is just line feed. Okay. You will notice that if you add extra spaces, you'll typically get that gray squiggly underline here that says we don't want extra spaces on the last line. We just want it to have been a line feed. All right, that's fine. All right, so that's all done. Okay, now again I'm going to go back to my checklist. Create the template for this page. Okay, now what's the way to create, what's the best way to create a template by cloning? I always take the last one. Okay, so let's do that. So we have instructor form. I'm just going to take it and copy it. If I can find my copy, it's up here. Okay, and I'm going to paste it into the templates course intro directory. Paste. And I don't want it to be called instructor form now. I want it to be called section form. And it's not very hard to clone this one. Okay. Okay. So let's make the code look a little bigger. Okay. So should the title be create instructor? No, it should be create section. Here's our form. That's good. Should the URL be course info instructor create URL pattern? No, it should be section create URL pattern. Okay, that's good. Should the method be post? Yes. This anti-hacking token, is that fine? Yes. Form as P? Yeah, that's fine. That's a general approach that will render the appropriate form for the appropriate model object. Should the button be submit? Yes, but it shouldn't say create instructor. It should say create section. Okay, section. All cloned, all done. Very good. Let's pick up our checklist again. Create the URL pattern for this page. Okay. Now I'm just going to go to URLs. Okay. And I'm going to do this the way that I like to do it. Instead of trying to clone the last one I did, I think it works well. The one that's easiest to clone is I like to clone section list into section create. So I'm going to copy section list and I'm going to put it under section detail. Okay. And is this going to just have the URL section? Nope. It's going to have section and then create slash. Okay, good. Section list as view? No. Section create as view. Good. Course info section list URL pattern? No. Section create URL pattern. Okay. And then in terms of this import that we need, I find it easiest just to type these in. Somehow when I try to automatically add an import, it doesn't seem to give me what I want in this circumstance. So section create. Okay, so that link, that's pointing to a view that's not created yet, but the import works just fine. Okay, so we've got that done. So let's, we have a URL pattern. Now we need a class-based view, which is going to be called section create in views.py. Let's go to views.py. Okay. So we have instructor detail and now instructor create. Let's take instructor create and let's clone that down for section create. So section list, section detail comes after section detail. Oh, we're missing a blank line there already. That was bad. And let's just put it right there. Okay, now it's not going to be called instructor create, it's going to be called section create. It's still going to be a subclass of object create, mixin, and view, and we have the imports for those. The form class is not going to be instructor form, it's going to be section form. And the template is not going to be instructor form, it's going to be section form. And section form is going to need an import, so we're going to do an alt return. And take that one. So, oddly enough, these cloning skills turn out to be very important for productivity with application frameworks like Django. Okay, it turns out that even the code that you have to code. I mean, there's a lot of code provided for us in the Django distribution. Okay, so for instance, here we get the view code. Okay, we're a subclass of the view, but even the code that you have to code by hand, typically it's pretty easy to copy and change the particulars as you go from a database model class to the next one, to the next one, to the next one. And as long as you get a pretty reliable process for copying and changing these, you can have very high productivity. So even though this is a pretty mundane skill, it really drives a lot of productivity with these kinds of tools. Okay. So what is left? Well, we need to add the link to section list. Let's do that. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to instructor list and see what my link looks like. I'm going to copy that. And then I'm going to go to section list. And I'm going to say, okay, sorry, we just had to do one there. Let's add that in there. And then how could we make that work for section? Well, it's not instructor create URL pattern. We're going to change it to section create URL pattern. Okay, that looks good. And that we're not going to create a new instructor. We're going to create a new section. Okay. And that's it. It's cloned. It's that fast. And I'm sorry. I was doing it on the wrong monitor. Well, you'll have to excuse me here. I'm going to go to. This is humbling. Going to go to section list. Okay, and I'm going to copy in the code like I wanted to do. So let me find instructor list. Here's the code I wanted to copy. I apologize for that. I got carried away. I trusted myself. And then I'm going to go to section list and make that a little bigger for you. And we're going to put that in. And we're actually going to do what we said we were going to do. I was doing it on the wrong copy. So again, it's not instructor create URL pattern. It's section create URL pattern. And it's not create new instructor, it's create new section. All right. Sorry about that, guys. I got carried away on the wrong monitor. Just after I said that we need to have a process that is repeatable for this cloning, mine broke down. Sorry about that. Okay, and the one last thing is going to be a test. Okay, we've done 1 through 5. We just have to test. So I really love this development server for Django because you generally can change your code however you want to change your code, and then you can just go back to the server and it sees your new code. Okay, so we just added the create for section, and oh, we're already there. So that's why we didn't appear to go to a new page. Yeah, I'd right here, create new section. Very good. Okay. Now, as you can see, everything was a drop-down except for this section name. Okay, so let's see. We're going to create in the current semester, which is now fall 2018. We're going to take a course, Infos 340 Systems Analysis. Okay, and let's give it to me. I need a lot of work. Kevin Trainer. Okay. We can maybe make this a little bit bigger. There we go. It wouldn't hurt to be able to see. Okay. And then the section name, let's call this section 004. Okay. And let's create this section. Okay. It looks like it created it just fine. There's nobody registered for the section. That's okay. All right. Am I done testing? No, you're not. Okay. The one error that can happen when you're creating something is you try to create a duplicate. I'm a little suspicious that I haven't done the work to keep this from adding a duplicate. So let's just go see. So it's Infos 340.004 in the fall of 2018. Okay, so let's go back to sections, create. So let's just say the section name is going to be 004. Okay, semester fall 2018, course Infos 340 Systems Analysis. Instructor Kevin, create the section. Now this should be a duplicate. Nope, it created another one. That's disappointing. Well, we can fix that. Okay, so let's go fix the code and then we'll fix up the data. Okay. So where do you guard against duplicates? Well, you do it with the model class. So let's go to the model class, models.py, and let's go find section. That's down towards the bottom. I don't know how we get these breakpoints. So where is section? Section is right down here. Here is section. Yeah, make it a little bit bigger so we can see. Okay. Now, if in fact we want, individual fields to be unique in their own right, okay, we can put a unique constraint on the field, okay. And in fact, we don't have to do that for the primary key because it's implicitly, that's an implicit characteristic of a primary key. But if we want to, fields to be unique together, we have to make that, we have to add another field to the meta internal class. Okay, that's where the metadata goes. Okay, now do we have another one that says, unique together? Yeah, we had it for student. So let's just go up to student and clone that. Okay. And now we're down on section. And let's just add this code. Okay, so now we've got the right name for the metadata annotation field, but we don't have the right name for the things that we would like to keep unique together. So what do we want? Well, I'm going to suggest that we want the semester, the course, and the section name. Okay, that's what uniquely identifies a section. Okay, well, we've got three things here. That'll work just fine. Semester, course, section name. Okay? So it is going to make sure that those are unique when taken together. Okay, now we've added this code. We should not be able to add a duplicate. But remember, we have a duplicate. Let's go back and explore that a bit. So if we look to the list of sections, oh yeah, we have two 340.004s in the fall of 2018. That's a disaster. Okay, how could we go and get rid of one of those? Well, we haven't added the delete functionality yet, so we can't use our own custom functionality. But remember, we have the admin app. So let's just go up and say that we want to use the admin app. Okay. And if I remember right, it's test user. Well, perhaps not. Perhaps it was test. I told you to be careful. It must be tester. Yeah, it's tester. Okay. And let's go now to sections. Okay. And we can see that there are the first one. Was that the one that we wanted? Well, this one's by Kevin Trainer. Well, I think we've got two by Kevin Trainer, so it doesn't really matter which of these we get rid of. And in the admin app, there's a delete button. So let's delete the second one. Say, yes, I'm sure. And now we come back and we've gotten rid of that. So before you have all the CRUD functionality into your custom app, if you need to go back and do corrections on your test data, just jump back into the admin app. Okay, so let's go back to our custom app. Okay, so now we're back to the section list. Let's try to create a duplicate again. So section name's going to be 004, semester, fall 2018. Course, Infos 340, the old systems analysis course. Instructor, let's have it be Kevin again. And now let's try to create a duplicate. Won't work. Section with this semester, course, and section name already exists. So now we have headed off the duplicate. Okay. Could we have caught that when we were doing the original design with the model classes? Yeah, we could have. We probably should have. But that doesn't mean that that you will. Okay. So as you develop your way through this application, continue to test as though almost anything could be wrong. Okay. And in this case, we found we didn't have a proper check for duplicates, and we fixed it pretty quickly. All right, so let's see where we are. I think we're done with the work we're going to be doing together in part one. Okay, so we're finished with the do together in part one. Now we've done the instructor in this section. You need to use the checklist in the same approach that we just used to do this for course, semester, student, and registration. So good luck on that, and I'll see you soon for part two. Bye-bye.